Hey guys, it's Canadian Kyle here at the Wealth Orders podcast, and today I'm joined with Chris Pennimpede. He is the CEO and president of Canterra Minerals, ticker symbol is CTM on the TSXV and CTMCF on the OTC. And they're a gold exploration company with projects in Newfoundland. So Chris, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kyle. I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to your questions.
Well, I got a few of them for you today, but I always start off the interviews the same with first-time guests. I asked them what they were doing when they were my age. I'm 26 years old. So what were you doing from 20 to 26?
Well, from 20 to 26, I was mostly in college and university, or college first, then universities. Back then, colleges couldn't give bachelor degrees. So I took my sweet time, I guess, going through my degree. And that was really by virtue of changing my mind a couple of times. My dad was a computer programmer, so I thought that was what I wanted to do. Having spent most of my teenage years, I guess, with computers, seemed like the right path. But in going to actually his work a few times, it seemed like everyone just sat in cubicles all day, and kind of had in my back of my mind that maybe that's not what I wanted to do. And I only took a few classes to kind of solidify that. And so then I went completely the other way, as I wanted to be outside, as far away from that environment as possible. And so I think I ended up taking some physical geography classes, which were very surface process, I guess, focused, where you could explain landslides and all sorts of things that you regularly see every day, especially here in BC, driving through the Sea to Sky corridor or something like that.
Sure.
And so, ultimately, I guess that there's no real work in physical geography so much unless you get into consulting, but that naturally kind of led into geology, as you have to take geology classes as part of that degree. And then I worked summers in mineral exploration. So really through 20 to 25, I guess I graduated when I was 25 or maybe 24. And so, I'd spent a couple summers at that point working in mineral exploration. Just as I came out, there's the financial crisis. And so I was working in mineral exploration at the time, and got kind of hit by that. And so, I was kind of traveling and sort of just biding my time for the market to get better. And so I guess by the time I hit 25, 26, I'd sort of gone through the financial crisis in 2008, and jobs were starting to pick up again, as gold price obviously was. And so from there on, into my later 20s, I was kind of off to the races with chasing $1,900 gold, as it ended up being. So it was really mostly university in my 20s, early 20s.
And chasing gold as a what exactly, in the banking side and in the geology side?
Yeah, it was all geology, and so yeah, I ended up with an earth science degree, but was really geology focused. I spent all my summers in mineral exploration, and that seemed to be mostly gold focused, but also copper. But when I graduated in 2008 or 2007, 8, the gold price took off after the financial crisis. So into 09, 10, and 11, when gold eventually hit 1,900, there was so much focus in the exploration space on gold, just because that was the hot metal at the time. And so pretty much everything I did, I was spending most of my time in the Yukon back then, because that was sort of the modern gold rush hotspot of North America, was all focused on exploring for gold.
Okay, so tell me about the origins of Canterra. Is this your first company you're spearheading the operations at? And you came a little late to the party with Newfoundland, right? Newfound Gold had a big rush of investments in there. Did you just want to be a part of the gold rush?
I mean, it certainly helped that it was, I guess, the next major hotspot for gold exploration in North America. So I certainly had my eye on it for quite a while. And if we step back even to like 2016, I think that's when Marathon Gold put out their first major resource. And Marathon Gold being, has the largest gold resource base on the island of Newfoundland right now, with almost 5 million ounces. Back then, I think they put out like 500,000 or 300,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I think that really put Newfoundland on the map. And so that was 2015, 16. And before that, the knock on the island, as they call it, was there just wasn't, you couldn't make really big deposits there for gold anyway. And so, there was always going to be small underground things which didn't interest most major companies or explorers for that matter. And so, Marathon changed that narrative. And much like my time in Yukon, where, obviously that had been picked over for placer gold, back at turn of century times, people hadn't looked for that, the source of all that gold. And so I think Newfoundland was the same way. It had a long base metal history, but no one had really systematically looked at it in the modern age for gold. So I was paying attention, especially with Marathon making that big discovery. But what really got me in there, I think, was Sean Ryan, who's a famed prospector from Yukon, and he made a lot of the discoveries that I worked on subsequently, and that got bought and sold in that last Yukon gold rush from 07 to 2012 or 11, whenever you want to cut that off. He jumped into the island after the Marathon resource and staked up large portions of it. And so we were late to the party, certainly. But I think, I'd had my eye on it for a while. And when this opportunity came up, it was just a function of timing. Everyone was pretty much starting to stake things and pick at things that were off trend or probably not in the best parts of the island geologically, or maybe were longer shots. And this property package that Canterra now has was basically right on trend for Marathon. And so when I was looking at the island, like, well, I want to be right next to the largest gold resource. I want to be in that same geological environment. So it gives me the best chance of making another Marathon-like discovery. And so, we got lucky just by virtue of a previous company deciding to change their focus to another part of the world, and these assets became available. And it all came up in that famed COVID super spreader event of what was PDEC 2020, where we met with the property vendors. It was Altius Resources, and they had just gotten the asset back, and we kind of knew that was probably going to happen. And we had some mutual connections, so we were able to work on a deal. And we were very fortunate just that this suite of assets are probably one of the best addresses on the island, apart from being Newfound gold. It just came to us, and COVID kind of delayed everything getting finalized, but took 6 months because of all the sort of, I guess, delays related to that. But we eventually got it done, and then we were off to the races in early 2021. So we were drilling straight away and have been super active since.
Yeah, you've been active with the M&A too. So January, you increased the land package by a little over 125%, right? And then in April, the what was it called? Sorry, here, the East Alder Gold Project you purchased in April.
Yep.
So you kept growing the land package, but since it's such a hot spot, I'm just wondering, did you overpay? Did you think you overpaid? What was your thought process when acquiring these projects?
So the first acquisition we did was just through staking. So thankfully, you don't have to pay more than just the staking fees for that. And the way Newfoundland's worked recently is they've been letting out ground that can be staked in batches. Normally, like, it's always open and you can stake whatever you want as long as someone else doesn't stake it. They had changed the way they did that online, and so claims from a few years past that had all canceled or lapsed were being held back from staking. So they released them all at once shortly after we'd done the deal for the original suite of assets. And so we were there on our computers at 4:30 a.m. Pacific time when that first batch came out, and started clicking away to get what we wanted. And we were most 90% successful in that, but there was a lot of competition. And then the East Alder acquisition, and then most recently, just a few weeks ago, we announced the acquisition of those Norzink assets. Those have all been sort of, I guess, strategic in getting more ground around in this new central gold belt of Newfoundland. And so, I wanted to cover off, the most prospective geology. And so a lot of the projects are smaller and add-ons to what we already have. So, we were able to do them for at least the East Alder for no cash, it was critical that I maintain my cash balance and use that for actual exploration. And we came out with a pretty tight share structure, so I was able to leverage our shares and people wanted our shares, so that worked out in getting the assets by doing it mostly in shares. So I think we've just been fortunate all around, as luck plays a reasonable part in this game, of being well positioned to do deals right off the bat and not to overpay by way of having a pretty strong market capitalization.
Sure. So you had the right position and share structure, you got the right land package, but can you elaborate more on that for people that haven't looked at your story? Like, where are you located and
So
why are you so excited about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if you're looking at a map of Newfoundland and you go right to the center of it, you'd see Marathon Gold. And so Marathon, again, has the largest gold resource in all of Atlantic Canada that's not developed. And it's going to be a mine where their scheduled first pour is in 2023. So there's sort of this fault or corridor that bisects or transects the entire central part of the island, and there's all these deposits lined up, gold deposits lined up along it. Marathon has the bulk of those. There's some further south, but we are the extension of that corridor to the northeast. So our claim block, joins or butts their claims on the western side or the southwestern boundary, and continues up to the northeast, following that same trace of that fault that seems to be important for emplacing all the gold in central Newfoundland. So, it's more than just nearology where you have claims like near Marathon Gold or near something else, near the Cote deposit in Ontario or something. We're actually on the exact same structure that's important for replacing gold. And so that was important to me. And that's why we jumped at these assets is, if you didn't have that right environment and you were just like nearby, but the geology wasn't the same, that didn't interest me much. So the fact that the geology was the same structural setting that seems to be important for replacing gold, it just seemed like a no-brainer to go after these assets.
Okay, what about the Nor Zinc projects then? Because are they on the Valentine Fault? Why did you get excited about those projects?
Yeah, well, the bulk of the assets we acquired were quite early stage. So, we're talking not complete grassroots where you're starting at just soils and hoping you get some response in a completely new frontier. There had been work done and up to drilling, and the drilling was really successful, and pretty much all the holes hit gold mineralization in some form. So you knew there was a gold system on the suite of assets we originally got. But that's no guarantee as an early stage explorer that there's going to be a deposit there. We hope so, and we're going to do all the right work to sort of prove or disprove that point. But you always have to be thinking about that as a junior explorer: is what's in your pipeline? What are you going to do next if this doesn't prove out to be a winner? And so the Nor Zinc assets became available, and backing up a little bit, this part of central Newfoundland was known since the 1800s as a base metal camp. Everyone was in here mining for lead, zinc, silver, and a lot of all the gold discoveries now are actually from or because they didn't assay for gold back then. They weren't interested in looking for it, and so it seemed crazy to me to have our existing property position, which covered off some of the geology that hosts these base metal mines, and not look for base metals. And so along that same thinking, the Nor Zinc assets came up, and they're north of the Valentine Lake Fault, within the volcanic rocks that host these VMS deposits or polymetallic deposits. And so it made a lot of sense to me as an explorer, and I just want to find deposits that will work out to be mines. And that's how you win in this business, in my opinion, is you find a deposit that ultimately someone wants to build into a mine or buy from you to build into a mine. And so the Nor Zinc assets are sufficiently further advanced than what we have. So there's already polymetallic deposits there. The question is, can you make them bigger? And so, and through our due diligence, we're we are convinced that there's some easy opportunities to make them bigger, and a lot of exploration upside that probably hadn't been addressed yet. So they fit our exploration model and our whole sort of ethos of wanting to be explorer that's looking for deposits in central Newfoundland.
Gotcha, gotcha. Let's elaborate a little more on that, please. Because there are different types of exploration companies. What type of exploration company are you? How are you creating shareholder value?
Look, we'll create shareholder value through discovery. It's as simple as that, I think. We're an early stage explorer, so at this phase, we're fairly binary in how shareholders win or lose. You know, right now we're drilling, and you know, if we come up with all zeros, then you know that'll negatively impact the share price. But you know, we're probably in the right address and environment to next door to Marathon to have the best shot at making a brand new discovery brand new gold discovery in central Newfoundland. Now the Norzinc assets have brought de-risked, I guess, Canterra significantly, where now we have resources on the books to sort of back up our valuation. So we're not probably completely binary in the sense that if we fail at drilling at the original assets, then you know we have nothing essentially. But right now with the Norzinc assets, you know we have a bunch, three main deposits that we can go to and hopefully prove that they're bigger and can turn into mines. So I guess at this stage, like, investors should know that you know the most immediate catalyst for our stock to go sort of positive or negative will be drilling on our Wilding Gold project, and whether that's successful or not. We certainly had success so far, but we're still missing that big marathon-like discovery hole, which of course everyone hopes happens in the first few holes, but that's just not how exploration usually goes. And then down the track, you know, looking to the Norzinc assets to add value by incrementally growing them and hopefully proving one of them is big enough to turn into a mine on its own.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So the drill bit, obviously a good way to create value. So talk about the drill program more. How many meters? Did you get results back yet? Where are you drilling?
Yeah, so when we first acquired the project, we drilled straight away in winter, just a short program because the weather window was about a month long before spring thaw came. So we did 2,300 meters. We got results back from that. And it was pretty, I guess, wasn't cautious, but they were sensible step outs to the drilling that had been done previously, which is another sort of small 2,000 meter drill program. Basically every hole came back with gold in it, but there's, again, not missing that big discovery hole. Plenty of interesting things, but that just sort of prove that there's kind of smoke everywhere. I use this analogy all the time, where there's smoke all over the project, but we haven't yet found where the fire is. And the analogy, of course, is, you know, we're seeing lots of gold mineralization, but we haven't really found where we see a big blowout into what would be a sizable gold deposit. Fast forward to today, we completed a whole summer worth of looking back at all the work we had done and previous operators had done, and working with Goldspot and some other consultants to really come up with a cohesive targeting model to really sort of put our feet to the fire and say, where is the best chance at making that big discovery on the project, given everything we know and all the data we've collected through summer. And so now we embarked on a 5,000 meter drill program in sort of mid-September. And so we're halfway through today. We've drilled, I guess, 10 holes as of this morning. So we'll probably have another 10 or more to go. I think the holes are getting a bit shallower as we go along, so there'll probably be 10 to 15 more. And the labs are very slow, as is becoming a age-old saying in our business in this COVID era. But you know, we expect results probably, I would say, mid-November, and then trickling into 2022.
Okay, thank you for that. And you keep saying we, so I like learning about the people doing the boots on the ground. So who's we? Who's your team?
Yeah, so I have we actually employ quite a few Newfoundlanders based out of Millertown, which is the hub. And Millertown has a long mining history with the Buckins mine and Teck's Duck Pond mine, which were those base metal mines I kept referring to, but not in name. So there's a team of geologists from that history that sort of live in the area, and we employ a few of them. And then our Vice President of Exploration, Luke Longridge, or Dr. Luke Longridge, rather, he's someone I worked with in the past and was able to win away from the consulting side and join me in the junior game here. And he just brings a wealth of world experience, and not just in gold, in many commodities, and he's had a lot of success in Africa finding various deposits. And I always think that's important. A lot of people want local people who've only worked in whatever jurisdiction to help guide them. But I think that worldly view makes a big difference. It brings fresh eyes to a jurisdiction and can make a big impact. And I think some of the bigger discoveries in over exploration time have been, people who come from somewhere way different and just bring a fresh pair of eyes to a mineral system or a new geology setting that they're unfamiliar with, but just attack it in a different way. And then I have Conrad, who's our young project geo, who's sort of heading up the drill program. So he spends most of his time on the project. But aside from the boots on the ground, most of the board members people can look up, but it's a sort of mix of seasoned veterans in the business. With Randy Turner founded this company. It's actually the spin out of his diamond company he sold to De Beers way back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And Canterra existed as a diamond explorer for the better part of 20 years. But Randy has a history in gold and other metals. And so, he had a history here also in Atlantic Canada, and jumped at the chance to do this Newfoundland gold play.
Okay, so what did Randy see in you? So you're the CEO. What's your relation with Randy?
I kind of known Randy, I think mostly through working in Yukon in the previous cycle. And he had Independence Gold. I think it was called Silvercrest then. Or Silver Quest rather. And our claim blocks were close together. I was working for a company called Smash Minerals at the time, which was the spin out of Underworld, which was acquired by Kinross. So I think I crossed paths with Randy then, and just kept meeting each other at AME's Roundup and PDAC, and so I guess he liked when I brought this to him, knowing that Canterra was basically a shell, because diamond exploration wasn't getting a lot of love, or any love really, in the business in the last few years. The company, I think, was more or less a shell at that point, so not active. And so we had a path to these gold assets in Newfoundland, and he had history there, and liked the assets and jumped at the chance. And as part of that, I became CEO. He's still CEO of Independence Gold, so that keeps him quite busy in BC and Yukon.
Okay, thank you for that. And you mentioned briefly Gold Spot, and I had Dennis on, the president, and Vincent on the show, the CEO. I like the team and the company. But why don't you go ahead and tell me, what's it like working with those guys? Do you just send them over the data, or do they get boots on the ground? Like, what's your relationship like with the Gold Spot team?
It can be as much or as little involved as you want, I guess, as big as your wallet wants to be.
Sure.
In our case, I'd worked with quite a few of their consultants in previous lives before, and in different jobs and different jurisdictions. And it seemed like Dennis and Vincent really just put together everyone I sort of liked as an individual consultant into this small army of really talented geologists who were sort of pushing the boundaries of machine learning and using drone mapping and all sorts of new age high tech things, which are sometimes slow to come to the exploration business. So they really, what they brought to us was just a more cohesive targeting approach, where they took all the historical data and ran it through pretty basic AI or more of just weights of evidence and different things like that really just, I guess, forced the targeting into saying, like, this target's probably not worth it, and this is probably the most the highest the highest priority conceptual target that we can see based on all this. And because of the COVID restrictions, there was never any capacity at that point to actually go on the ground, but they would certainly do that in a lot of settings. So, there's a lot of groups that do sort of what Goldspot does, but Goldspot's certainly, I guess, the biggest. But, it often comes down to who you actually have on the team, as you pointed out, and they have a pretty crack team of geologists right now.
Okay, thanks for that explanation. When I was looking at your corporate deck, I noticed you had a big question mark on the western side of your property, close to Marathon. Is that because of swamp or heavy forest? Why wasn't there any historical work done there?
Yeah, good question. So, despite Marathon having, I think, 500,000 ounces when this project, the Wilding Gold Project, was staked, no one had actually bothered to look here. There was a bunch of old soil work that was for base metals that I guess didn't come back with anything of much interest. But it wasn't until 2016 that forestry pushed roads into basically the heart of the project, or the eastern side. And through pushing the roads in, they uncovered quartz tourmaline pyrite boulders, which are the exact same veins or assemblage of minerals that you see on Marathon's ground that gives them their deposits. So, smart prospectors knew that there's forestry activity going on, and they basically went in after the bulldozers and cats had sort of cleared things out and sampled some rocks and came back with up to 75 grams per ton of gold in some of them. So then the ground was immediately staked after that, and really that only eastern portion was worked on because it was easy access. You could drive right in. You could drive on all the spur roads that went in to collect timber from various areas of the project, but that western side has a creek through it, and the foresters didn't have a license or didn't bother to go that far west, and so it was left. So the whole western side had all those question marks because no one had bothered to just cross over the creek to go collect samples on the other side. Yet the geology all continues between Marathon and our ground between that gap. So this summer, that was our highest priority, was to go in there and sort of do a first pass and see what we see from that. Still waiting on results, but okay. You'd expect there'd be a continuation between the two. Fingers crossed that works out. But I see really no reason it shouldn't continue returning anomalous gold values that will work into a drill target sometime in 2022.
Okay, could you explain this for a non-geologist here? What are you doing there exactly? Like what are you waiting on?
Yeah, so for the non-geologist, when you come into a brand new region or area, and you have claims over them, or maybe you don't, you need some sort of data to help guide you into the right, I guess, place to do actual follow-up work. And in the modern age here, you can't see rock at surface. Everything that's at surface has been found, more or less. And so everything's covered. So you have, as a geologist, you have nothing to go on from a visual point of view. So you first look at geophysics, and that gets you, that helps you stake your claims and get you into the right ballpark. But then you need some geochemistry. So you need some evidence that there's gold in the subsurface. And the best way to do that is through soil sampling. And that's basically exactly as it sounds. You take dirt, put it in a bag in a sort of systematic way, usually in a grid fashion over an area where you see in the geophysics or in the sort of hypothetical map geology would be interesting or should maybe host gold. You put it in a bag, send it to a lab, and you get assay results, which include how much gold there is or isn't. And so for us, in our situation, that had been done on the eastern side, but there had been nothing done on that west side. So we had no basis to say that there was any gold there whatsoever. And so we did this sort of a systematic soil grid across it. And so hopefully that comes back with, as we would expect, the same order of magnitude of gold as we see on the eastern side of the project. And then that will allow us to say, okay, we can go and trench, or maybe we just move straight to drilling if the target looks really good in the future.
Okay, thanks for the explanation. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
No, I want to mention before we end, share structure. You did mention a tight share structure, and I do like seeing that. So why don't you go ahead and tell us who are your main shareholders of Canterra?
Yeah, so we started out the gate with Michael Gentili, and he's sort of a well-known resource investor. He's actually making quite a big name for himself nowadays, but previously most people probably hadn't heard of him as much. But he really took a large portion when we did the original deal, and we welcomed Eric Sprott into the story in summer. So we have Eric Sprott with 19%. Michael Gentili, I think, now sits at 14. Altius Resources, the big royalty company, has, by way of doing the deal, they vended the original project, so they have 7%. And then really we just have two funds that are in there that own, I think they're now 7% apiece. And then the rest is management at 10%, and the rest would be sort of retail float. And so, there's probably, less a dozen or so shareholders of the vast majority of the stock, which is a good position to be in. It's, I guess, bad for liquidity for someone wanting to get in, but if we're successful in drilling some significant gold here, then that lack of liquidity will work well for us in pushing the shares higher as demand outweighs supply.
Yeah, for sure. And how would you say market sentiment is toward your company right now? Are they aware of Canterra? It is a hot sector or location, sorry.
Yeah, and Newfoundland's probably the hottest place for exploration, I would say, on the planet. Certainly in North America. I can't, except for Yukon last cycle from 08 to 11, I don't think I've worked in a jurisdiction that has this much activity all at the same time. So I think we were very lucky in our timing and coming out when everyone just wanted a Newfoundland story, and I think ours, it had been drilled. Everyone knew there was gold there, so it wasn't some moose pasture that had a lot of uncertainty. And so I think our timing with sort of the Newfoundland hype worked well, and we've been able to basically maintain over almost a year now our sort of 20 million market cap as we plot along here.
And how about your cash position? You are putting it to use. So how much cash do you have, and when do you expect financing in the future?
We're around 4.2 million right now. It's rapidly going downward because we're drilling, but that's okay. That's what the money's supposed to do, and supposed to be used for. So we'll end the year in good shape to have enough to drill again next winter, or summer, depending on how what the results dictate this time around. So yeah, I don't really see a raise in the near term at all. We're well cashed up. Because of COVID, we have really low burn rate because we don't have an office. Everyone just works from home, and in Newfoundland we don't even really have an office. We rent a small core shack. So it's this pandemic's, I guess, been good at really controlling overhead so that all the dollars go into the ground. So by way of that, we're in good shape for drilling into 2022.
Nice and lean. Perfect. You answered a lot of my questions here, Chris, and we do have a recurrent segment called the Vault, but just sum it up for us in a nice little statement. Why should potential speculators choose Canterra over any other exploration company in that area?
Sure. Yeah, I'd say you should choose Canterra as a speculative drill play because we probably have the best property package next to the largest undeveloped gold resource on the island of Newfoundland. And this program, this 5,000 meter drill program, should prove or disprove for a large portion of our Wilding project whether there exists a substantial gold system. So you can look forward to results of that program sort of starting November 2021 and into 2022. And that'll really, if you like drill bit plays, it probably doesn't get much better than that for making a brand new discovery in what's a new gold camp on the island of Newfoundland.
I got one more question for you, actually, before we go into the vault. I just want to get your take on the price of gold because all other commodities, like the vast majority of them, have been having a stellar year. Gold had its run up, but then 13, 14 months, it hasn't really done much. So, where do you think the gold price is going in the next 12?
Yeah, I've never been one for forecasting. Yeah, I think forecast usually tells more about the forecaster, as I think Warren Buffett always says. But look, if all I've ever done is look back in time with metal cycles, and you can kind of gauge how long these things run. So, the last one was 2004 to 2011 with a black swan event in there. There's a period in the 90s up to about 96 or 97. So you kind of say you have a 7 to 10 year run in the metal cycle. And so the only thing I ever sort of think in the back of my mind, I guess, is, maybe you could say 2016 was the start of this metal cycle. A lot of people call that the sucker hole. Where gold price jumped up, everyone jumped in to do deals, and deals came out with lofty about valuations, and then 2017 and 18 were kind of rough on gold price in particular, and a lot of those deals sort of didn't do well. But these cycles always have sort of rockier starts before they really start an upward trajectory. So optimistically, I think we at least have a few years left here to see metal prices continue to increase. And I think that it won't just be gold, it'll be all of them lock in step.
Okay, thank you for that. Hopefully, yeah, maybe sucker hole in 2020, who knows, but we'll see
Maybe
what happens.
another black swan event. So that kind of throws a wrench into everything, I guess. So
Yeah. Well, thanks, Chris. I've been enjoying this, but now it's for my time for my favorite part of each episode. It's the vault, and it's just mentorship like questions. It's just 3 questions I ask every guest. And like I say, it's my favorite part. You guys, if you enjoyed the conversation, make sure to like and subscribe. But let's get into the vault. So, in the vault, just 3 questions. First question: what did your parents teach you at a young age that has stuck with you to today?
it's a good question. I kind of think that it had to be, being a team player and maybe hard work and honesty. And those all sound very cliche, but I can see that in myself as I've gone through. My parents had sort of very normal jobs and like working computer programming and librarian. So very safe things, I guess. But even in this crazy business of mineral exploration, I think I've done okay for myself because I've always been pretty reliable and honest, and definitely been a team player all the way through. And I think that explains why I sort of advanced into the management role reasonably quickly, I guess. I guess on the flip side of that, instilling those values in me, I said no to probably a lot of grayer opportunities over the years, which would probably have been an easier path to money or exposure, I guess, to more market things. But I've always tried to do things the right way and go the right direction with things, and I've always taken less money than maybe I should have. So I think it's worked for me well as I'm in my late 30s and I'm president and CEO of a company now. But on the other, maybe I wasn't as selfish as what people need to be sometimes to be ultra successful in this business quickly. But I don't have any regrets on that.
No, for sure. You've been very transparent with me. I appreciate it. Second question. We are the Wealth Holders podcast. So can you name a wealth holder or a high net worth individual? And if you don't want to disclose their name, that's fine. But what did he or she teach you, either in business or in life?
Yeah, so I think he's not ultra high wealth like Eric Sprott or something, but I was fortunate to work a lot of years with a geologist named Adrian Fleming. And still to this day, a lot of the things he taught me and did sort of informed or it continues to inform how I behave or how I explore or how I manage things. He's been a very prolific explorer over his career, had a lot of success making discoveries, sold quite a few companies and done very well for himself. But I think the main things I always learned from him was, like, the first time he hired me, I asked for more money, and he said, you have to make hay while the sun shines. And this was sort of in 2008, I guess, or maybe no, 2009. So, gold was starting on its run, and I didn't really appreciate that that quote until things fell apart in 2012. And so you learn very quickly as a geologist that the metal cycle can really burn you. And so you really do have to make hay while the sun shines, because you're going to have a lot of lean years between metal cycles. But I think he taught me a lot about the business and marketing, and trying to reduce the amount of technical jargon geologists tend to use, and really be able to talk about your project and your stories, to people who are just retail investors, because you need to complicate the stories. People just want to know what your goals are and what you're trying to do, and you don't need to show them endless geophysical maps. So he was really a master in sort of marketing, but he was also a very good explorer. So it was a rare combination of those two things. Usually people have one or the other. So I really learned a lot from him about those particular things on the business side. I guess the other thing I did, and I won't name people specifically, but during those lean years from sort of 13 to 16, I just took a lot of CEOs and successful bankers and successful geologists out for coffees and lunches. I was always surprised they would say yes, but it seemed like it was actually not as hard as you'd think to do. And so, quite a few of them gave me a lot of really helpful advice that sort of helped guide in my career one way or the other. And I think one person in particular, taught me how to think a lot more critically, which helped me as an investor and also make career decisions. His saying was always, people would always ask me a ton of questions when exploration results or whatever it may be would come out negative, but almost no one would ask questions when things came out as positive. And so, that's a big part of this business, is trying to read between the lines of things. And so, he taught me that, and taught me a lot of the critical thinking skills I think I still use to this day. I guess the final thing is, someone at one point told me rule number one is be likable. And thinking back on it, there's tons of people I worked with that probably weren't the best at what they did, but they were very likable and great to have on the team, and made the whole team better just by everyone was having a good time. And it's still something I work on. It's not an easy one. Definitely being likable gets you a long ways in your career and in life in general, I think.
Well, for sure. You're a likable guy. I really appreciate that answer. You went in depth, you went a different route, all kinds of routes. I really appreciate that. And I agree with you on the take people out to coffee or ask them. I've been cold calling a few big names, and I've been surprised at some of the guests I've had on this show here. Last question though, you might have already answered it, but I'm just a 26-year-old. Any advice for the young people starting their journey in life?
Oh yeah, like where to start with that one. I guess I would say, looking back when I was 25 and what I wish I knew, or 26, I'd say my advice would be, get out there and travel. I think, if you have down times in your career or in that phase of your life, especially when you're not, given millennials tend to have kids later and the rest of it, you have those opportunities probably to travel and try to travel to places that are way different than where you're based. I think that's helped me form a better worldview and a better, perspective on the world in general, and probably taught me to be much more thankful and humble in life, and not to be so relentlessly focused on the pursuit of money. And I'm stealing that from another high net worth individual that I spent some time with. But we do spend a lot of time on it, and sometimes it's good to take a step back and just try to enjoy things a little bit more and focus on things other than pursuing trying to get rich by drilling gold. I guess the only other thing I'll add to giving advice to the millennials out there, the younger millennials than I am, is I guess it'd be mostly geologist focused, but when metal cycles crumble or when there's down points in careers and in whatever you're in, there's always opportunities to chase things, chase your career into sort of different parts of the world, maybe less so now with how things are interconnected, but certainly as a geologist, there was always those times where you could, there's no work in North America, but you could go, to Papua New Guinea or Mongolia or somewhere completely foreign, and make your way for a little while things are improving. And so you should take those opportunities, and you might not get those opportunities later, and they'll probably do more for your career and building out your network than anything else will. So, try to say yes to, I guess, as many things as possible is probably what I'm trying to say.
It's a great way to end it. Thank you so much, Chris. If you want to say anything to close us off for the listeners, now's your chance. But thank you for coming on the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kyle. And I hope everyone tunes in to see how Canterra does with drilling this fall, and look for our results, as we lead into winter and into the new year.
Perfect. Have a good one, eh?